Hello from New Zealand. So this video is basically a list of what I consider to be the most egregious lies against Trump in the current 2020 United States presidential election. And yes, they stink all the way over to here in New Zealand. So the first lie that I'll be looking at is that apparently Trump has mishandled COVID and not complied with the experts, which is abundantly false. And the interesting aspect of this is that the expert is, in this case, Fauci, who was advising the Trump administration on COVID issues, and the left have really nothing against Fauci. But on the other hand, they excoriate Trump, who apparently can't do anything right when it comes to responding to COVID. So what makes this particularly interesting is that Fauci has spoken favourably about the Trump administration's response on numerous occasions. In fact, you won't find anything about Fauci criticising the Trump administration in his response to COVID. So let's roll the tape.
And the coordinated response has been, there are a number of adjectives to describe it. Impressive, I think, is one of them.
Are we doing everything possible that you would do up to this point?
You know, I believe so. I mean, always when you have an outbreak, there's a little bit of the fog of war associated with that. You're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to keep up with an evolving situation. But I think in the context of what we're being challenged with, I think everybody's doing really well. We discussed it. Obviously, there would be concern by some that, in fact, that might have some negative consequences. Nonetheless, the president listened to the recommendation and went to the mitigation. First and only time that I went in and said we should do mitigation strongly, the response was yes, we'll do it. The travel was another recommendation. When we went in and said we probably should be doing that, and the answer was yes. And then another time was we should do it with Europe, and the answer was yes. And the next time we should do it with the UK, and the answer was yes.
Let me ask it this way, Dr. Fauci. Do you think you have the full backing and support of the White House from the president on down?
I do.
Would you agree that the task force and the president took the outbreak very seriously from the beginning, taking unprecedented action, saving millions of American lives as a result?
Yes. I mean, obviously, I think one of the first things that we had said and discussed before was the shutting off of travel, for example, from China. And then second, after that, we did it at a time, for example, when we were getting cases from Europe, which actually seeded the northeastern part of our country, particularly the New York metropolitan area.
And here we have Democrats downplaying the virus, which is just a laugh because they later attacked Trump for doing the same thing. Now, Trump, regardless of what he was saying or how soft he might have spoken about the virus, he was acting tough on the virus with actual decisions, which were in line with the experts' recommendations like Fauci, etc.
But we do want to say to people, come to Chinatown. Here we are. We're, again, careful, safe, and come join us.
Pelosi getting her hair done on Monday with no mask on. The city's pandemic orders do not allow hair salons to open indoors.
This should not stop you from going about your life, should not stop you from going to Chinatown and going out to eat. I'm going to do that today myself.
Catching the flu right now is a much greater risk than anything that has anything to do with coronavirus.
Every expert agrees now, looking back, that the president's call to restrict that travel from China pretty early on was a good decision.
But Joe Biden, he got it wrong. The very same day the China travel restrictions were announced, Biden attacked President Trump for acting irrationally.
This is no time for Donald Trump's record of hysterical xenophobia and fear-mongering to lead the way instead of science.
Days before, Joe Biden's top coronavirus advisor, Ron Klain, got it wrong too.
Would you ban Chinese travelers from arriving in the United States? I wouldn't. I think that's premature.
Biden tweeted the same attack about xenophobia again, and again, and again. As late as March 26, the Biden campaign still refused to support President Trump's action. Biden's staff would only say travel restrictions could be warranted. Finally, 2 months after President Trump's decision, Biden's staff claimed he supported them all along. They want to rewrite history. But no amount of spin can cover up the fact that Joe Biden got it wrong and President Trump got it right when American lives were at stake.
Also, interestingly, Biden has been in power during the outbreak of a virus, namely H1N1, and that was under the Obama administration, and they handled it terribly. It came down to luck that they did as well as they did do. So it's rich that he should criticize Trump. Interestingly, of the top 5 worst affected states by COVID deaths, 63% of those deaths are in Democrat-controlled states, 37% Republican. And it seems evident to me that the Democrat governors of those affected states are trying to divert attention away from their mishandling of the virus by blaming Trump. Now, Trump helps on a federal level, so with the supplies of masks, testing equipment, speeding up vaccines, introducing travel bans, etc. But the on-the-ground response is the responsibility of the Democrat governors in those states. And also, interestingly, only Democrat states are crazy enough to require the aged care homes accept COVID patients, and those specific states are New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And of course, you can't talk about Trump and COVID without mentioning the lie that apparently Trump said to inject bleach.
Supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me.
And of course, we have to look at the accusation that Trump is racist. And this is frankly a blatant lie. It's a disgusting lie, a particularly nasty lie. I've looked at somewhere between 24 to 25 accusations, and all of them are deceitful rubbish that don't stand up to research. Also, tellingly, Biden has said some complete corkers. One of them being that he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle, and the other was, you'll see in the tape, that if you have trouble deciding between me and Trump, you're not black. But nobody says anything about these verified instances.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
And tied in with this is the accusation that Trump has struggled to condemn white supremacy, which is just complete bunk. He's been doing it constantly since 2000, and frankly has probably done it more than any other president in the history of the United States.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
Sure.
You've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem.
Would you repudiate David Duke?
Sure.
David Duke and robocalls are out again, the white supremacist movement supporting you. Do you have any words for that?
Well, I disavow.
David Duke endorsed me? Okay. All right. I disavow. Okay?
When we looked at it and looked at the question, I disavowed David Duke. So I've disavowed David Duke all weekend long on Facebook, on Twitter, and obviously it's never enough.
Trump's refusal to condemn, distance himself from white supremacists.
The Anti-Defamation League is already out there asking the president to clarify why he didn't condemn white supremacists.
So are you prepared right now to make a clear and unequivocal statement renouncing the support of all white supremacists?
Of course I am. Of course I am.
When Chris joined, we had a news conference, and they asked me the exact same question. I said, I disavow. I disavowed then. I disavowed today on ABC with George Stephanopoulos. I disavowed again.
David Duke is a bad person who I disavowed on numerous occasions over the years.
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke. Ultimately, he got to the Ku Klux Klan, which obviously I'm going to disavow. I've rejected David Duke,
I've rejected the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan.
David Duke is saying to his supporters and followers, vote for Donald Trump. White supremacists are saying, vote. Do you want those votes?
No, I don't want them, and I don't want him to say it.
And you want the supporters?
No, I don't want anything.
What do you think of white supremacists, by the way?
I don't like any group of hate.
David Duke announced his Senate candidacy, claiming your agenda.
Are you ready before you ask the question?
Newt Gingrich said every Republican should repudiate this guy no matter what it takes.
And I do. Rebuked. Is that okay? Rebuked.
Rebuked.
Done.
Done.
Just to clear it up this morning, can you, naming it, make a declarative statement that you denounce, that the president denounces it?
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists.
Do you want white supremacists to vote for you?
No, I don't at all. Not at all.
His campaign is denouncing a show of support from the KKK's official newspaper, as in the Ku Klux Klan.
In the same New York Times interview, he denounced white supremacists. He denounced the neo-Nazis who support him.
President Donald Trump signed a congressional joint resolution that condemns white supremacy, neo-Nazis, and other hate groups.
When he was asked to condemn white supremacists, he didn't.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
When specifically asked if he would denounce white supremacists, that the president dodged it.
I spoke out forcefully against hatred, bigotry, and violence, and strongly condemned the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, and the KKK.
Well, I have to say that it's disappointing that a sitting U.S. president can't outright condemn white supremacy.
In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy.
The President of the United States, in the year of our Lord 2020, refuses to condemn white supremacists.
Any group of hate, I don't like it. Any group of hate, I am, whether it's white supremacy, whether it's any other kind of supremacy, whether it's Antifa, whether it's any group of hate, I am very concerned about it, and I'll do something about it.
He has yet once to condemn white supremacy, the neo-Nazis. He hasn't condemned a darn thing.
And of course, we can't overlook the lie that Trump apparently called white supremacists good people, when in the same interview he specifically excluded them.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
And of course, there is the accusation that Trump called servicemen suckers and losers, and that accusation traces back to an article by The Atlantic which cited 4 anonymous sources, keyword anonymous, and has since been roundly debunked by a whole swathe of officials who went on the record, who were there on the day, who have said that it is complete rubbish, as you can see on the screen. And it's a very nasty accusation which goes completely against the grain of Trump's actions. He's done nothing but honour and respect the servicemen, and it's completely against his character, diametrically against his character. Biden, on the other hand, is on the record calling servicemen stupid bastards, a dull bunch, and being slow.
I have incredibly good judgment. 1, I married Jill. And 2, I appointed Johnson to the academy. I just want you to know that. Let's clap for that, you stupid bastards. Man, you are a dull bunch. Must be slow here, man.
And then there's the lie that Trump has fostered violence and protests and all of this sort of thing, and that it's his fault. Meanwhile, the left facilitate, encourage, basically ferment as much racial tension as they possibly can. They're the ones creating the problem.
Now, Mayor Ted Wheeler said about Donald Trump, quote, "It is you who has created the hatred and division," end of quote. Let's go to the videotape, shall we?
And so let's stay the course. Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized right up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
That's it right there. Pull it up. I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House. A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight. And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Let's go back now and look at the riots, because this matters. Since RBG's death, the left, they've, of course, surprise, surprise, vowed more extreme violence.
Very peaceful.
Of course. So let's go. Over the weekend, there were some very specific threats. Okay, University of Waterloo, the political science professor, Emmett McFarlane, that's not doxing because he tweeted this publicly, burn Congress down before letting Trump try to appoint a new SCOTUS. Then we have Reza Aslan, who I believe was a CNN contributor and personal favorite of the Young Turks for a while. True. He said, if they even try to replace RBG, we burn the entire effing thing down.
The accusation that Trump is groundlessly criticizing postal ballots. So the reality here is that Trump wants the tried and true methods of voting that were exercised in the 2016 and previous elections, and doesn't want to see an expansion of unsolicited ballot systems for the 2020 year. He's fine with absentee ballots, which are individually requested by the voter. An unsolicited ballot depends on the accuracy of a voter roll. So there's a voter roll with everyone's names, addresses, details. Everyone on that roll has spammed out their voting papers, and provided that the voting roll is completely up to date and all the dead people have been removed and everyone's addresses have been updated, then you might be okay, as long as the postal system in that state can handle this. The problem is where states, due to COVID, want to introduce unsolicited ballot voting, and they haven't had a history of using it previously. So some states have used it previously, some haven't. A new introduction into a state for the 2020 election is guaranteed to be a complete mess. It's going to be messy, it's going to be horrible. You're going to increase the risk of fraud. There will be people receiving wads of ballots at their addresses for people who used to live there, etc. And we've got many cases of just general problems of mail-in ballots. So New York, for example, 1 in 5 rejected, 21% rejected. New Jersey, a new election had to be ordered due to voting fraud. The initial winner only won by 240 votes, and end result they had to throw out nearly 20% of the ballots. We've had over 500,000 mail-in ballots rejected in primaries over 23 states. Michigan had 846 ballots thrown out because voters were dead. They had another 10,600 mail-in ballots rejected. This was in a state where Trump squeaked a victory in 2016 by 10,704 votes. So it's going, yeah, in any tight margin state, this is a big deal. In Nevada, 1 in 5 mailed out ballots never were delivered. In Florida, 35,500 mailed in ballots didn't count due to missed deadlines, technical flaws, etc. And that state has winning margins of often less than 33,000. So it certainly can change the results of an election. Wisconsin, thousands of ballots nullified. So there are certainly risks with mailed-in ballots as opposed to physical voting, and certainly with unsolicited ballots. So it's a valid concern on Trump's behalf. So that covers pretty much everything I want to at this point, and check the video description for any other details on any other lies that I might add in there with some text and links, etc. But yeah, Trump 2020.